This story is about a girl. A girl who doesn't care what anyone else thinks of her. A girl who always gives 100% in everything she does. This girl hasn't really lived the perfect life, although others might think the opposite. This girl has gone through some struggles in her life, and it was a lot of work to overcome them. This girl is me. It all started when I was 4 years old. Towards the end of my preschool year, my parents noticed I was beginning to struggle with speaking incomplete sentences. My mom particularly noticed that I was developing a slight stutter, and as a little more time passed, speaking became more and more difficult, ultimately leading to the point that I couldn't even say simple words such as mama or daddy. I couldn't really speak at all. Then kindergarten came, and my speaking had gotten a little better, but wasn't progressing as quickly as it needed to. In first grade, my parents met with my teacher and collectively decided that I needed to begin speech therapy. Miss Neal was my first therapist, and she would teach me a ton of different strategies I could use, but breathing was the biggest thing. Without even realizing I was doing it, I would tense up while speaking, which caused me to hold my breath. I had to be reminded to breathe constantly. Miss Neal wanted so badly to help me overcome this issue, and I will never forget how she helped me. She tied a rubber band to 2 beads, one on each end, and she told me that we were going to call him Stretchy. Stretchy was supposed to help me stretch out my words as I pulled both ends of the rubber band when I spoke. I came home from school that day and looked at my mom and said, "Hey, watch this." I pulled Stretchy out of my book bag, turned to her and said, "My name is Baileigh." I remember the look on her face was pure shock as she ran over to me with tears in her eyes and cheered so loud for me. We could not wait to tell my dad when he got home, and his reaction was just as priceless. That was the first time in a long time where I had said a clear sentence, and I will never forget that feeling. From then on, I took Stretchy with me everywhere. I made a little bed for him at my house in my room, and I even made him a home inside my desk at school. All of my classmates thought that he was the coolest thing ever, and everybody wanted to play with him. I took really good care of Stretchy. His beads kept falling off, and every time they did, Miss Neal would always make me another one. I even had one made for my Sunday school teacher at church, and my dance teachers kept one for me too. About 3 years later, I didn't really need him anymore. My stuttering was getting a lot better, and I remembered to breathe. But that's just the beginning. I kept doing speech throughout elementary school, and everyone else that I did it with had already graduated by 2nd or 3rd grade. And there was still me. I was given all of these different types of strategies, and they all worked for a little while. But then there was that time period where I would go back to not being able to say a complete sentence, and I would struggle to breathe, and breathing became a big thing again. My speech teachers were doing everything they could to help me, and nothing really seemed to be working. And then my classmates started to pick up on what was going on, and they started asking me all these different questions. Unfortunately, being bullied falls into my story. This one particular girl clearly made it known that I was different and would get in my face every opportunity she could. She would make fun of me, call me very mean things, and even made me get to the point that I was even afraid to come to school. I was also extremely blessed with a lot of classmates that began to take up for me. They would stand up for me and not let her mess with me anymore. Whenever I would have to do a presentation, my classmates were very kind and not make me feel like I was rushed, and they wouldn't talk over me. And that helped me more than they will ever know. During these years of elementary school, I was also attending outside speech therapy. Due to the fact that I am a Christian, I will not name the location to be respectful, but the journey there was not a very good one. Normally at a speech session, you play interactive games and you do interactive activities. I had a very kind lady working with me for the first few weeks, but then she was moved, so I got put to a different therapist. From the start, she seemed very cold, sometimes even angry. Not necessarily at me, but I still felt uneasy. We never played any type of game or anything like that. Every session, she made me read books out loud to her. Now, don't get me wrong, I like to read, but this was a lot, especially because the books were so long and we took multiple breaks during the book to check my progress. Every now and then, she would record a session for us to listen to and see how good or bad my speech was that day, and then we would listen and reflect on it at the next session. Now, for reference here, I'm only 7 years old. One time she recorded a session and she asked my mom to be in there too, and we listened to it together, and my speech actually sounded really good that day. At least that's what my mom thought. Though apparently the therapist did not agree. She looked annoyed as we were listening to it, and I was smiling the whole time because I was pretty proud of myself. We got done listening, and she leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Baileigh, you are never going to stop stuttering. You will stutter for the rest of your life." And at that moment, I was on the verge of tears. My mom grabbed me and took me out of the room, and she took me to my dad. Of course, he asked what was wrong because he saw my mom and I with tears in her eyes. My mom said, "Get her out of here," and he took me straight to the car. Since that day, I have never walked back into those doors. My parents have always been my biggest support system, so of course they weren't going to give up that easy. After weeks and weeks of searching, my mom found McCullough Therapeutic Solutions, and that was the best place I'd ever been to in my entire life. You know, I had maybe 5 different therapists when I was there, but I loved them all and they helped me so much. My last therapist was named Ms. Hayden, and she was the game changer for me. I had a speech binder that had all the things that I wanted to accomplish and improve on, and that's what really motivated me. I graduated from speech therapy, and on my last day they had cookies and cupcakes and a poster board that had a note written from each therapist I had had there. Not gonna lie, I still have my days where I seem like I've never done speech therapy before, but most of the time I basically just need to remember to breathe. Since I graduated, I've done things I never thought I would be able to do because of my stutter. In school, I would never want to make any big speeches or speak in front of the class or anything like that because I was scared that I was going to be made fun of, or I was scared what others would think of me. But since then, I've worked with younger kids, and they will sometimes ask me why I twitch my eyes or why I hold my breath, and I just tell them that it's something I do. I also gained the confidence I never thought I would have. I even started to introduce myself as, "Hi, my name is Baileigh and I have a slight stutter." That broke down so many walls and helped me become more and more respectful of myself and more proud of who I am. But the biggest thing I've done since I've graduated from speech therapy was a mock trial last year in 8th grade. Even though my speech was tremendously better, I still wanted to talk as little as possible. I was set to be a direct examiner. All I would have to do was come up with questions and ask them, and I wouldn't have to worry about much. About 2 weeks into working, I ended up being the closing prosecutor. I had to come up with a 5-minute speech to deliver in front of 100 or more people. I was terrified. The worst part was that everybody on my team kept checking in on me, but they were only checking on me. They weren't worried about anybody else. They would ask me certain questions like, "Hey, are you finished yet? Remember to put a lot of emotion when you're delivering your speech." Or, "Can I read over what you have so far?" It was almost like they didn't trust me that I was gonna either make the speech good or deliver it well enough. Well, on mock trial day, I proved them all wrong.
Jessica Bateson didn't choose to drink as much water as she did. She was forced. As said in Alex Richards' testimony, she was told by Tammy Keynes to stop playing Water Jeopardy, but then again, she was forced. Because of Taylor's careless decisions, an innocent woman lost her life. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defense wants you to believe that Mr. Durden is completely innocent. But I want to ask if you can do something for me. Would you just close your eyes for a second? I want you to picture Jessica Bateson. She shows up to play what she thinks is an innocent game of water jeopardy. See her face as she's drinking water. And more water. And more water. Her throat is closing as she's struggling to breathe. And now, imagine she's you. You may open your eyes. Jessica Bateson was someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's friend. So I'm asking you to do the right thing. If you believe in your heart that what you've heard is true, that what you've heard today is true, you will find Mr. Taylor Durden, as we all know, guilty.
My team was very surprised at how good it was. And for the record, prosecution won. After the fact, I felt like a completely different person. But what made me feel the best about myself was when I was rehearsing my speech with one of my team members. When I finished, I told her that if I take a lot of pauses, that I had a slight stutter and I just needed to catch my breath. And she said that she could tell a huge difference from 6th grade to last year, and that made me feel really proud of myself. Like, I wrote that 5-minute speech and barely stuttered throughout the whole thing. And everyone in the audience listening had looks of awe on their faces. So even though it seems like I've said a lot, and you can obviously see and hear in this video the struggles that I talk about, there are still years of examples I could mention. I have my good days and my bad days. But in the end, I'm really proud of myself for all that I've accomplished and all the things that I've done. I'm thankful for my family and friends and my therapist for never giving up on me or letting me give up on myself. I am thankful for my mom and dad for being the best parents a girl could ever wish for. They always have my back and I know I can always count on them. But most importantly, I thank God. My faith has gotten me through so much in my life, and no matter what this world throws at my way, I know I got this. After 7 years of holding my breath, eye twitches, and complicated drawbacks, I can finally say, I found my voice.